All right. Hello there. Welcome to This Week in Mormons, the Sisters Edition, with your hosts, Ariane Smith,
and Tiffany Hales.
Real life sisters.
Yeah.
And sisters in the gospel.
It's so true.
Here we are at the end of March.
At the end of March. We just finished spring break.
We did. And
so tell me about your spring break.
My spring break was pretty uneventful, but the week before spring break, I got to go chaperone a 6th grade trip, science overnight camp in the snowy mountains.
And I couldn't decide if you
North
were
of Boise.
Crazy.
I didn't go for the whole week.
Or
I only went
a glutton for punishment.
I only went for 2 nights with my 6th grade daughter. It was a fascinating observation of 6th graders in the wild, literally in the wild. So I had like a cabin of 5 girls that I was in charge of, like making sure they got to the right place at the right time. There were college grad students there to like teach them how to do these science experiments.
So you didn't have to teach anything. You were just there to make sure.
Just there to make sure
everybody behaved.
There was no funny business, no nonsense. So
now, did you sleep in the cabin with them?
Yes, I slept in the cabin with my girls.
Oh my gosh! I don't. How did you even get any sleep?
Yeah, calling it sleep is a stretch. Okay, that is for sure. The second night, one of the other chaperones had mercy on me and slipped me one of her melatonins. And then I was thinking, if I were really smart, and now I know because I've never done this before. Next time, I'm going to get something serious. Like, who do I know that has Ambien? You got some, right?
Yeah. You just come to your local pharmacy, which is my house. I can hook you up with just about anything.
Lessons for next time, because I could not sleep in that cabin full of girls. Not because of them. They were actually pretty good. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
You know. So, but
and you got 2 more kids that you have the potential to do this for, because they do this for all 6th graders.
So my oldest daughter, my husband went for half the week. And so this was like my turn with our second oldest. So we'll see if we make it for the next 2. But here are my 2 observations.
Okay.
The 6th.
What have you learned from 6th grade girls in the wild?
The 6th grade girls talk a whole lot about the boys.
Oh gosh.
And they like to have dance parties. So that was fun. The 6th grade boys wrestle. All they do, wrestling.
That
all day, every day. I mean, they even had like presentations and skits that they had to give on their like science experiments. Somehow they always worked wrestling into the skits and the presentations. And then when they had free time, they're just wrestling in the snow. This is like this is new information for me as a mom of girls, but I do have one boy, so now I'm prepared.
Exactly. Now, see, this is not new information to me because our cousins Randy and Ryan were about 18 months apart in age, and I was smack in the middle of the 2 of them. And I spent a lot of time with them growing up, and they would seriously just get on the floor and go at it with each other. And I would just look at them because I had no brothers. Like, what is your problem? That is so weird. Why do you 2 feel the need to wrestle and beat each other up? But it definitely is a boy thing. So yes, now you have a preview of your life in a few years when your son is in 6th grade.
I'm prepared now.
Yeah. Well, you say that, but I think it's really not going to prepare you until he starts knocking things down in your house because he's wrestling with his buddies.
Probably not. So,
see, all you can imagine is just how sweet he is now.
I know. Plus, he doesn't really have anyone to wrestle with yet. With all this, actually, no, he will wrestle occasionally. I will find him wrestling with my youngest daughter.
Okay. And she is, out of all your daughters, she is the only likely culprit to wrestle with him.
She's up for that.
Well, I didn't get much of a spring break because my son Mark was working, as you know. He has had the coolest experience for the last 5 weeks. And you got to do this when you were in high school, and you loved it. And our sister Ciaran did it as well. I tried to convince some of my older kids to have this experience, and I never could. Mark took a bite at this apple. Mark has been a page in the Senate here in Idaho for the second half of the legislative session. So they divide the pages into 2 groups, a first half and a second half, because these kids are seniors in high school and they have to miss school.
Right.
And so missing 12 weeks of school is a lot. Missing 6 weeks of school is a lot, but not as much as 12 weeks of school.
It's a lot of amazing.
It's a lot of amazing. He absolutely loved it. He loved every minute of it. the first day when I went to pick him up, because I just dropped him off every morning and then just picked him up. And it was a lot of work to drive him there and drop him off. He didn't have to fight parking or anything then. But the other thing too was I got this time in the car with him every day, in the morning and in the evening. And in the morning, we would listen to news podcasts, and in the evening, he'd tell me about his day. It was like the best mother-son bonding anywhere. So after his first day, I asked him, I said, Mark, scale of 1 to 10, how fun was this? And he's like, level 10 fun. This is a kid who he's not into sports. Sports aren't his thing at all. And he's very much into history and politics. So this was right up his alley, and just such an incredible boost to his self-esteem to go and do this. And so he knew during the second session that, one of his weeks would be during spring break, so he wouldn't get that week off. So he didn't get that week off.
I know, that's a sacrifice. That's how you know he loves it. Exactly. He's willing to give up his spring break for it.
Exactly. So, he got to see how the sausage was made, be that good or bad.
Or not made, because nothing's happening.
True. So anyway, he just finished it up, and he had a really incredible experience. And so I would just encourage all of our TWIM listeners out there to check into your legislature. Every legislature has pages. Some of them use college students, some of them use high school students. But if you have a kid that sort of thing is right up their alley, he learned more in 5 weeks sitting in the legislature than he learned in 4 years in high school.
Oh, so same here. It was one of the most amazing experiences of my young developing life. And my senior year, all my history, you take government your senior year. My government teacher showed us JFK, the movie.
Oh gosh.
Like multiple times. So I definitely got more out of
let's watch JFK.
I loved him. He was a great old guy. He was like this close to retirement.
Yeah,
so
clearly,
I definitely got more experience out of that than I did out of high school government class.
Exactly. So now the bummer is he has to return to high school. He's got literally graduation is 2 months from today.
Oh, he's going to be.
Yeah, today was his
trunky.
Today was his
to
first
use
day
a
back.
Missionary term.
And it's going to be a long 60 days for mom. Is all I have to say.
Yes, it is. Okay, wait. You said right before we were about to record, you said you have beef with my steak.
Oh, that's right.
Do you want to talk about that now or later? What is your beef with my steak?
Want to discuss the beef with your steak.
I don't know how you could possibly have beef with my Zion steak.
Your steak that's extra and a little special.
Yes.
Well, your steak that's extra and a little special seems to think that other steaks need to join them in being extra and a little special.
Oh, are they trying to get you on board? Let me guess. Is this to help with their Living Last Supper artwork?
This is exactly right.
Living art.
They're to help with their living art. So apparently, they have apparently, rather than have the same cast every night, different nights they're having different casts for the living art, because one of the counselors, I believe in my bishopric, is going to go play one of the characters.
Well, because they've extended it this year.
Yes.
Okay, for those of you that don't know what we're talking about,
yes.
my
steak. Give the background.
My steak.
Your extra steak.
My steak that's a little over the top, but loving. They started it several years ago, this Living Last Supper, where they recreate, the famous artwork, and they have people in full costume posed in front of a backdrop. It's actually insanity when you see it. It looks just like
it does look really cool.
The real thing.
Their production, I'm going to give them props for their production values. This is not a fly by the seat of our pants, throw it together.
They tear apart the chapel. Not tear apart the chapel. They somehow take off the podium and turn the entire thing into a stage in the chapel to do this. Anyway, but they're extending it this year.
Hints from the tabernacle. They do that at the tabernacle. They have stages and all sorts of things.
There's professional lighting, sound equipment. There's a whole thing.
Yes, so they are extending it.
They're extending it. This must be why they're asking for help, because I think I can't remember how long it was last year, but the original year they started it, which was probably the year before COVID.
I think it was the year before COVID.
It was like a week Like it started on a Tuesday or Wednesday and it went through Saturday. So it was really only 3 or 4 days.
Okay.
But this year they are making it like 10 days.
Is it 10 days? I
So
thought it was only like 5.
It
but
goes
it's
over
10.
a Sunday. It starts on like
Oh.
April 6th and it
So
goes.
what are they doing for your chapel?
Well, we're getting kicked out of the chapel on Sunday, April 10th. Since this chapel is like a stage now,
yes,
they are sending us to other buildings for sacrament only.
Oh, interesting.
So our ward has been sent to some other building for like a 1:30 sacrament only meeting for that week. Anyway,
well,
so this is my guess as to why they're picking on you. It's longer, so they need more people.
And that is exactly right. So one of the bishopric members is in the cast. Okay, I don't have a problem. You need some cast members, but like they sent out these like really long sign up things saying we need ushers, we need volunteers, we need this many people from your stake. Da 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 da. I'm like, when did we agree to be part of their chaos? Why are we part of their chaos? They're extra. We don't need to be extra.
You're all extra now.
Apparently
we're reeling you all in.
Well, and I mean, I'm saying this, and yes, there's mild annoyance, but at the same time, it really is an incredible gift to the community. And they are saying, hey, bring your neighbors, invite people. It really is a good missionary tool and gift to the community. But like I said, I wanted to be asked first if I wanted to be extra. Right. I didn't move into the geographic boundaries of extra. You did.
Yes, I did. Unknowingly. Here, this is what I think will be interesting. We have a stake women's conference the night before this event starts in our stake center in the chapel. So and it's called like the Women in Christ. It has to do with women in Christ.
And this is the same building that they're turning into a stage.
Same building that they're turning into a stage. So I am speculating, I think we're going to get some type of something to do. They got to use that stage in whatever they're doing for us, right?
Oh, so they will. This isn't a situation where they're going to have the women's conference and then construct the stage after. You think they will have to have had the stage already set up?
That's what I think. I don't think they could set it up that fast. So I'll report back on that.
Yeah, report back on that. I'm kind of curious. So yeah, that's my beef with your steak.
Okay, well,
should we do some news?
Note taken.
Okay, it is a slow news week.
A little bit of a slow news week leading up to conference.
I don't know if this means we're going to have like major news in conference, but
I think this is fairly typical leading up to conference. I think things quiet down. Everybody's prepping for conference.
Well, sometimes like things trickle out.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. But anyway, so forgive us tonight for what we do, because we can only work with what we have. And right now it's not much.
We don't have a lot, but
we don't have a lot.
We got some good ones. Okay. So first,
now you lead us off. I have not read this.
First article we're going to talk about. I really did enjoy this one. Actually, this was one that the Salt Lake Tribune released a couple days ago by Peggy Fletcher Stack, and it is
love the Peggy Fletcher.
Yes, it is all about the current Relief Society presidency, who many are speculating may be soon to be outgoing Relief Society president.
The former Relief Society president.
So they have been in 5 years, which is really hard to believe, right?
Oh, yeah.
Man, time goes fast when there's a pandemic thrown in the middle.
I think we can place money on the fact that they'll be replaced.
Right. Well, if history follows tradition,
true,
then they probably will.
We should say recent history, because there were presidencies of the past, Bill Stafford, that stayed for years.
So Peggy Fletcher Stack did just a really good write-up on this potentially outgoing presidency, and just the great strides that they've made. And you know what? When I first read the title, I think the title said something about how unique this presidency was, and how they've really changed things. And I was thinking, Are they? And then as I read the article, I was reminded of lots of the things that they have done, and they really have been quite busy during their presidency. And they really just have taken, they've just done things a little bit differently than some of the presidencies of the past. So as you know, we have Sister Bingham as the president, and her 2 counselors are Sister Burbank and Sister Alberto. And, she says in the article, this is, we've got a single sister, Sister Burbank, and she says, this is not the first time we've had a single sister in the presidency. This is not the first time we've had someone from another country in the presidency, but this is, they've done things their own unique way. So first of all, she talks about how they didn't use the primary voice when they spoke to us. They spoke to us more like adults. And then
there has to be training.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes.
For that. Because I don't know how you'd speak that way.
I don't know.
Church brings in a vocal coach.
I don't know. It is very interesting.
Okay.
Anyway, and then she talks about just all the unique service that they did, and really a lot of like international service and speeches and talks. And then she talks about all of just the wonderful talks that they gave that were gospel centered, but they really always related it back to themselves as being real people, and how they frequently shared their own trials during their talks. And then do you remember the video they put out? I think it was during the pandemic. It was really good. It was a video with all three of them. And they talked about how between just the three of them and their families, they've had, financial problems.
Oh,
infertility.
Yes, I do remember that.
And they gave actual numbers.
I do remember that, and I loved it.
6 family members with LGBTQ. They have, 2 of them are divorced. 2 have chronic illness. 9 of their family members have addictions.
And I think this was not only for the Relief Society presidency, but the General Relief Society board as well.
Was it all of them? Okay.
It was not only the presidency, but also the
whole
board.
Yes, that's right.
Just to kind of represent the diversity of challenges and experiences that the board has had.
Yeah. So they talked about that video. And then as I was reading this article, I was reminded that every single one of these sisters, all 3 of them, have talks that they have given in conference over the past 5 years that have stood out to me. Like been stellar talks, like the kind of talks that you go back and rewrite. And I was thinking, you know what? I do think that is rare.
Yes.
For all 3 members of this presidency to have at least one that is really just like
outstanding,
goes down in history as like, oh, that was one of those talks. And then she does a little write-up about each one of them. Little write-up on Sister Bingham. She quoted her daughter, who talks about how she is always withholding judge. Like she is not one to judge. She's open and accepting of everyone. And she says, I have a full-time career and graduate degrees instead of children, but my sister's a stay-at-home mom of 5. And she said her mom has encouraged us both in what they're doing and has been just a cheerleader to both along the way, no matter what they're doing. They talked about Sharon Eubanks, and she is like, has this reputation of just, they quoted someone that is a family friend of her that said she is the best aunt in the world, not only to her own nieces and nephews, but to dozens of other children and young adults. She just takes people under her wings. It says they also quoted this friend as saying that at least 4 families had designated her in their wills as their guardian if anything would have happened to their children. So she just has this reputation of just like taking people in and loving on people. And then Sister Aburto, she has talked frequently about, like, she just has had an amazing life. She lived through the earthquake in Nicaragua and civil unrest in that country. Her brother died in that earthquake.
Oh, wow.
And then also her father committed suicide, and she's been very open about all these, and she's been divorced, and she has just lived a life. And it just talked about how so many of the Latino saints and Latina saints can really relate to her and feel a connection with her, sharing those experiences. Anyway, so it was a really cool write-up. If you want to just read a little bit more about those ladies, and kind of sums up a lot of their time in their presidency. It's a good one.
Okay, well, that does sound good. Leave it to Peggy Fletcher to do an in-depth. So our next article, which is, again, kind of conference related. The Relief Society one is somewhat conference related because, again, we expect they will probably be released, which, will be interesting because, they usually do the releases in the afternoon. So will they have at least one of them give a goodbye talk in the morning?
Oh, that's right. Because we have our women's conference that night.
I know.
So I'm assuming we will get to hear from all of them one more time.
I hope so.
Since we do have which I am very excited that they have brought back the women's nighttime session. Are you happy about this?
I am, because And Jeff talked about this a little bit in the podcast. I can't remember, it was last week or when I was with him, but just the the third session was just kind of okay, more conference. It wasn't anything special. And when they got rid of the women's session as well as the priesthood session, we talked about the loss of tradition, of tradition,
going with your daughters,
or the boys going with their father, and just kind of the sadness of that loss of tradition. So I am really glad the specialty sessions are.
Me too.
Are
and
back.
And just for us as women to be able to hear, we're going to be able to hear from so many more women.
Exactly.
This conference during that session.
Exactly. So anyway, so yes, I am excited about that. You and our plans for Saturday night, whether we're together or not, are still a bit up in the air and undetermined, but we're at least going to watch it.
Yeah.
So, all right. So Temple Square renovation news. Jeff kind of touched a little bit on this last week when he was talking about they are limiting conference attendance to 10,000. So we know that the conference center seats 20,000. They're limiting it to 10,000. Of course, there was speculation this was COVID related, but Jeff was also talking about, Temple Square and what's going on with Temple Square. And he's like, can you really funnel all those people through the church plaza?
It's a mess.
Well, the thing is last week when he recorded, the church plaza was still open. They are closing off the church plaza.
Wait, what's considered the plaza? By the fountain?
Yeah, that strip of land.
Oh, I thought it was all closed already.
No, that strip of land that used to be the street that the city deeded to the church so that they could make the plaza
by the reflection fountain.
So they're closing that off. They're closing everything to the east of that, like the fountains and everything, all the grounds that are in front of the church office building. And so there is really not going to be any way to get around what I like to call one church plaza.
Right. Unless you park in the garage under the conference center and go up. That'd be the only way to get there.
Because literally the only part of Temple Square and including one church plaza, which I include, the church office building, the Joseph Smith building, the administration building, all of those buildings there, you will still be able to go and walk between where the tabernacle is and where the and where the temple is, kind of in that area, so you can look at the renovations of the temple. You will not be able to walk on the other side that abuts the Joseph Smith building. You're only going to be able to get into the Joseph Smith building through the front door. And other than that, you're like walking around the block. There's no direct cut through that I could see when I looked at the map between the south side of Temple Square and the north side of Temple Square. So I thought that was really interesting. And so that whole plaza area is going to be closed from April 2022 until late 2023.
Right. Okay. And I thought I saw in the article they're making the reflection pond bigger. Is that right?
Let's see. This is the Main Street Plaza efforts will include, and you know what? I bet they probably closed this off after conference, given the fact that they said they're going to close it from April 2022 until late 2023. They probably will wait till after conference. So the Main Street Plaza efforts will include inspecting and repairing the plaza deck. And so that would be like if you are walking in between in that what used to be an old city street, you can tell it's a deck. It's not just the city street. They've put concrete like square paver things there. Updating the plaza's waterproofing system, refurbishing the north and south entry fountains, installing a larger reflecting pool. You were right.
That surprised me because I thought when they first shut this down, they had said something about getting rid of it. Was that just in my head? That must have been in my head. I don't
remember them getting rid of it because that reflecting pool is so
that's where
iconic.
You take the pictures.
Yes, it reflects the temple and you take the pictures and you get lovely, lovely venues.
Well, I'm glad they're making it bigger. More room for more brides.
Exactly. More room for more brides. Because if you've ever been there on a Saturday in the summertime, they are moving brides in and out. And groups are waiting for the next picture venue. In fact, I kind of wonder, do they have a diagram for photographers? Okay, you go to this picture venue first and then this one and then this one. So they can keep everybody
Let's keep this
flowing
orderly.
in the same direction.
Keep it orderly.
Because leave it to the church to keep the picture taking orderly and have diagrams
They-
as to how the pictures should be taken.
The church can move a crowd.
They
I
can
was
move a
used to
crowd.
say at BYU, they know how to do a line. Maybe not quite to the level of Disney, but they're
What
close.
about to the level of Chick-fil-A? Chick-fil-A can move a line.
Not quite there, but
Okay.
they're close.
They're close.
I say third runner-up
Okay,
to
fair
Disney and Chick-fil-A.
enough. Refreshing the landscaping design to better integrate the plaza with the church office building, plaza area, and the Salt Lake Temple grounds. And it said the church did publish a map showing available pedestrian access points to and from the Temple Square buildings during the plaza closures. So from my looking at the map, there's not going to be a lot of access. So
All right.
anyway,
Okay.
moving on.
The next article is very confusing.
Sorry, I made your printer do.
Oh, my printer's.
I touched a button I shouldn't have touched. I'm so sorry. So that noise is Ariane's printer
All right.
because it's operator error on my part.
Well, oh dear. Sorry.
It's spitting something out.
The next article is very confusing. BYU made a list of top 50 party schools in the country.
Hello?
This makes no sense.
It makes no sense.
I don't think this is the official list that usually comes out because usually they release the party school list and then they release the stone cold sober
list.
school list.
And we are number one.
And
on
I
Stone
can't
Cold
remember
Sober.
what publication does that. Do you remember?
Don't
Is it like
remember.
USA Today or?
You know what? Let me look that up.
You
while
look
you
it
tell
up
them about
while
the
I
article.
tell you about this.
Because this
because
was done by Barstool.
This was done by
knows?
Barstool, who I think they're fairly new at this. I don't think that they've been doing this for very long. So
Clearly.
they said that, yes, BYU is on the list of the top 50 party schools, and they are number 13. And even though, the guy who wrote the article said, well, our alcoholic beverages are certainly not required to make a party. It's widely assumed that beer-fueled party usually propels schools to such lists. So
it is the Princeton Review
Oh,
who
Princeton
does
Review.
the party school list
Okay.
and Stone Cold Sober.
All right. So I don't know, but they got some funny comments. It said on Barstool's Instagram page, there were a lot of comments about this, and many people were disagreeing with this choice of putting BYU on the list. Someone said, y'all must have been y'all must have crazy Red Bull parties.
Yes.
So I don't know. It said Barstool did not release its criteria for creating the party school list, although it did claim the data was compiled by the American News United syndication.
Whatever that is.
Someone that's trying to sound official.
Maybe I need to look that one up next. Here's what I think. Let's just look up that United. What is it?
American News United syndication. It's probably not even run in America. I bet it's some like overseas.
Just see it. Let's see if I can type fast enough here.
American News United syndication. Anyway, so there you go. Everyone's very confused, and
well, I have a theory. You want to know my theory?
yeah. What's your theory?
Okay, so there's United Media, but I don't see any American News
this
United
is
syndication.
Some made up thing.
I think it might be some
This
made
is-
up thing.
This is fake news, people.
I think this literally might be fake news. And Barstool is trying to drive clicks to their site.
Yeah.
And so because I can't find this United, what was it called again?
American News United syndication.
Yeah, I cannot find anything on that and doing a simple
Yeah,
Google
I
search.
think too. This is
So,
some clickbait.
I think it's some clickbait. I think they're making it up. I think they threw BYU on there because they knew by throwing BYU on there that would increase their clickbait because everybody would go, how did BYU make number 13 as a party school? That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And so I think it's totally web driven. I don't think there's much merit to this, especially when they're not releasing their criteria. Because if you're proud of your study, you'd release your criteria and say, well, here's the criteria for why we chose what we did.
The criteria is,
especially when you have an outlier like BYU.
Some intern just got to randomly pick.
Someone who is a page in the legislature, just like my son. Hey, page boy, make a party school list.
Oh, goodness. Anyway, that was good for a chuckle.
It was very good for a chuckle. Okay, so our next story is the story behind the CTR ring. Have you always wondered what the story was behind the CTR ring?
Yes, I thought this one was super interesting because I never knew the history.
And I thought the CTR ring had actually been around a much longer than it actually was.
Yeah.
And now in looking at the story and like factoring in my age, I'm like, I might have been one of the first people to actually get a CTR ring.
You probably were.
Because the creation of the CTR ring occurred in 1970. And so it was part of the primary curriculum committee. They were going through and they were doing curriculum, and they really had no idea when they created this CTR ring what the heck it would turn into, 50 years later. And for Latter-day Saints, it's been a simple expression that's been, part of our cultural lingo, because not only will you find it on rings, you'll find it on other jewelry, socks, t-shirts, bumper stickers. It's kind of like a badge of honor. And so, and the phrase choose the right.
Right.
Again, that wasn't something, it's not found in scripture. It really hasn't, wasn't in the early vernacular of the church or anything. There's one reference to a talk made by Brigham Young in 1964, where he says that we are free to choose as him.
You mean 1864?
Yes. Sorry. Yes. 1864. He said, God rules and reigns and has made his children as free as himself to choose the right or the wrong. And, but where the term choose the right really got into the vernacular of our culture is the song Choose the Right.
Right.
Do you remember learning that? Even though it's in the adult hymn book, do you remember learning that in primary?
Everybody learns that in primary.
Exactly. And so it was written sometime before 1909, and it was included in the book Deseret Sunday School Songs, back when we used to have Sunday school. So then in 1970, the church's general primary board, which was 8 women, created the green CTR shield and recommended it be used on all official church materials. Shortly thereafter, the new CTR curriculum, including the CTR shield and ring, were introduced as a reminder for children to make good choices and throughout their days and lives. And so the CTR ring is in 28 languages. And so my recollection when I was a kid, that when you went into the 8-year-old class to be baptized, that's when you got your CTR ring. I think they've bumped that up now. I think as soon as you get into the CTR system, which I think happens after Sunbeams.
They give them to, even my Sunbeam got one this year.
Are you kidding me?
Now they give them, and they give them to our entire primary at the beginning of the year.
So every year the kids get a new ring.
Because they probably know that ring from last year is long gone.
Exactly.
Let's just give them another.
I got my ring and I probably lost it immediately. And you had no option in the 70s to then go get another ring.
It's very precious back then.
Very precious. So according to the Deseret News, the original committee chose the shield representing shielding the children from temptation, and the green background to represent an evergreen tree that stays constant from season to season. Did you know that?
I had no idea.
I did not know that either. Here's the other thing too. So they're going through and they're trying to, so they've got their shield, they've got their color. Now they're trying to figure out what they're going to put on there. So they thought about RC for right choice.
This was so interesting.
But they felt that was too close to Roman Catholic and RC Cola.
Which is caffeinated.
Which is caffeinated.
So that would have been a big no-no back in the 70s,
yeah,
right?
We're a little over the caffeinated sodas these days.
Was that a thing in the 70s?
Oh, it was so a thing in the 70s. Like, you were a Jack Mormon if you drank caffeinated soda. Like,
definitely cannot put RC on your ring.
You were not a member in good standing. Anyway, so they eventually landed on CTR, or choose the right. Now, here is another very interesting statistic from this article. According to the Salt Lake Tribune in 2005, so granted, this is a little outdated by almost 20 years, church distribution services because, they're not going to give us fresh information. Mm-hmm. Church distribution services sold more than 522,000 rings in 2005 in 24 languages internationally.
Yeah, we need some updated data.
I know. Well, and the first ring sold for 35 cents a piece. Today, $1.25 will get you a CTR ring.
Not bad.
At least the ones that the church does.
The green ones.
The green ones.
Not the fancy gold ones.
Not the fancy gold ones. You could pay a lot more money if you wish to upgrade.
You can even have diamonds put in your CTR ring. I've seen some of those. I actually knew a girl that had a CTR ring for her wedding.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding. Kind of different.
That is different. That would not be my choice.
It was a very fancy one, but
okay.
Okay. Moving on. So next story we have is about missionaries. Well, one in particular who are not able to go to the temple before their mission.
Oh.
This was an interesting little write-up on Elder Suarez.
Yes.
He is now doing a bunch of press and tours for the new temple in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, which of course he's from Brazil. Yes. So he's got close ties there. And Jeff talked before about how they like to send, President Nelson likes to send him to the ones that are special to them.
Exactly.
So he is, doing all that. But the whole article talks about how he was not able to go to the temple and get his endowment before his mission, which I'm sure was pretty common back then because there were less temples.
It was. It said that, his family lived in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Mm-hmm. At that time, they had announced a temple in Sao Paulo, and I think they were constructing it, but it wasn't done.
Right.
And so the closest temple at that time was Mesa, Arizona.
6,000 miles away.
So, yeah.
It's hard to remember that, that's how it was when our parents were growing up.
Exactly. So that was kind of a hard pass.
Yeah. So, and it hasn't been like that for many, many years. Yeah. Almost all missionaries are able to get their endowment before their mission.
Because they generally these days don't have to travel 6,000 miles.
Right. But that was not the case during the pandemic. No. And it talks about how during the pandemic, so many missionaries were sent out without getting their endowment first because temples were still closed. And you don't want to keep, what do? You got to carry on. You got to send your missionaries out. Yeah. But I do think that's a really interesting thing to think about because it said that even like the missionaries, there's even missionaries going out now that are still not able to, depending on where they live, if it's too far. But sometimes they'll go to a mission and be able to do it on their mission. Yeah. And that is hard to think of. Like, can you imagine doing that without your parents there?
Well, you know what? When they were, because I've had a couple of friends that this has happened to, that they had to send their kids out on their mission without having gone through the temple because the temple wasn't open.
Right.
And then once the temple opened, they let them go through on their mission, but they gave parents the option that they could fly to the city where they were going through the temple and go through the temple with their kid.
Okay. I wondered how that worked.
Yeah. So it was an option for parents, not a requirement or anything, but if they wanted to, they could go do that. Cause I had several of my friends who did take advantage of that and went through with their kids on their mission. And I'm like, that's kind of a unique, cool experience.
That would be unique and cool. Also, I think it would be, as a missionary, would it be overwhelming to have that experience in the middle of your mission versus like before?
I don't know. Because,
or do you think it would be better because you're on like such a spiritual high that
Elder Suarez says in the article, which I found really interesting, he did not get to go to the temple until he was nearly complete with his mission. He only had a couple months left and they had finished, he's in Rio, and they had finished the Sao Paulo temple. And so he gets permission from his mission president. There was a group from Rio that was going to the Sao Paulo temple. And so he got, including a stake president. So he got permission from his mission president that he could get on the bus and go with them, because his companion had also not been through the temple.
So they both wanted to go through.
And the mission president said, okay, the stake president's going to be responsible for you. And the stake president agreed, and he agreed to stay with his companion. His parents met him at the temple.
So they traveled very far. And that said,
well, no, they were already in Sao Paulo.
Right, they were close.
Yeah, they were close.
But they brought his brother too, and they all got sealed.
So he got his endowments, and then they got sealed together as a family. And he talks about in this article just the power that it gave him and the understanding. And so in some ways, I think, maybe if you've been out on your mission for a few months and you've been really, into the gospel and praying and doing the things that the missionaries do that just constantly allow them to have the Spirit with them, that, maybe the temple experience at that point just becomes so much more meaningful, because Elder Suarez said it really did. It sealed his testimony.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's true. Maybe it's less overwhelming when you're already, immersed in gospel 24/7.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a cool article. And of course, he's thrilled to see the new temple in Rio, just about ready to be dedicated. And he says it's like a dream.
Yeah.
So very, very cool to hear his experience with that and see his excitement for that.
Exactly.
All right. What's next?
Okay. So we're going to pivot to the new Supreme Court nominee, Ketanji Brown Jackson, because when her confirmation hearing started last week, and when she was introduced to the Senate, she was introduced by a gentleman who is named Thomas Griffin. And he is, not only is he is a retired U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit Judge, and he is the former general counsel at BYU, making him obviously a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And he had some really interesting words to say about Judge Jackson. He starts it off by saying, I come here as a jurist appointed by a Republican president, and I come here as someone who understands there are few greater responsibilities under the Constitution than serving as a justice on the United States Supreme Court. And he goes on to describe Judge Jackson and the things that he appreciates about her. And he says, and I thought this was very telling, he says, although we did not always agree on the outcome the law required, I respected her diligent, careful approach, her deep understanding, and her collegial manner, indispensable traits for success as a justice on the Supreme Court. And I just really appreciated his remarks, because a lot of his remarks were focused on partisanship and just the division that partisanship is creating, and the number of Republican judges, federal judges, who were endorsing her because, regardless of her political beliefs, she really does have the qualifications to be a good Supreme Court judge. And so kind of a cool shout out to a member of the church, Judge Griffin, who, was able to make these opening remarks for what is a very historic Supreme Court nomination.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. Very cool. Okay, next article is about BYU. BYU honors Jewish Passover with a model Seder dinner. I did not know this is something that happens every year at BYU.
I did not, and it's since the 80s. We were both there.
I know.
How did we not know this?
I'm actually really mad that I never went to this when I was there. So it was started in the 80s by a professor named Victor Ludlow, and now Jeffrey Chadwick, who's a BYU religious education and has also worked with the Jerusalem Center. He has carried it on. And of course, they couldn't last year with COVID, but they brought it back this year. They model it based on, all the traditions of Judaism and the Passover. And he talks about how much of our heritage in Christianity is related to that. And so they do this as just, a really cool thing in relation to Easter and learning about Jewish traditions. And
Well, and they said in the article, which I thought was interesting, they
Mhm.
don't do it on the actual like Passover days because they don't want to be infringing on this ordinance.
Right.
They don't want to pretend, that they're engaging in this
Right.
ordinance.
And
They want to have
they're
respect.
careful to call it a model
A model,
cedar. They're
exactly.
not actually calling it a cedar. Anyway, so they have this dinner, and like throughout the dinner he explains the symbolic meanings behind the prayers and the food, and the Hebrew songs
Hmm.
and the chants, and how they're significant and how they relate to Christian beliefs. And I saw the picture. They had some
Uh-huh.
pictures along with this, and it was clearly in the ballroom at BYU, and it was clearly catered by the
Yeah. Yeah.
classic BYU catering table with the layout and the dishes and the napkins and the
Yeah.
table and
Yeah.
those BYU glasses. They've been there forever. I was looking at it and I was like, oh man, that just brings back so many memories. And I'm also just really sad that I never was aware this was
Oh,
happening when I was there. And maybe I wouldn't have appreciated it in my young 20 something
true.
naivety. But now I would go. How do I get in? Can I just like show up?
So, don't I look like a 22-year-old college student? No, I
Yes.
don't have 4
Yes.
kids.
This is really embarrassing, but the closest I have gotten to a cedar dinner is watching one on Real Housewives,
Oh gosh.
and it erupted in a fight. It was an awful, like, horrible, like,
What?
travesty.
What genre of Real Housewives were you watching when they were doing this?
It was New York City
Well, yeah, that would make
Housewives,
sense that it
and
was New York
it
City.
was not a great representation. I'm sure the people that were putting on the dinner were horrified.
Well, either that or it's like, hey, you invited the Real Housewives. What did you expect?
True.
They kind of have a reputation. Okay, so the next story we have a little story out of Ukraine, and this is written in first person by a gentleman by the name of Jason Stout. And Brother Stout is a member of the church. He actually served a mission in Ukraine, and then he and his family have been living in Kiev for 6 years. And of course, when the war broke out, he talks about they had to leave their home behind, a house that they built. He says, it may soon end up as rubble, just another casualty. And so he gets his family out of the country, and then he crosses back into Ukraine in order to meet with some friends and get to some vital belongings they had left behind when they fled. And he talks about having to wait in very long lines to get back across the border again, and just how cold he was, but it was nothing compared to the suffering of others. And he says, for most of us, and I think this is really true, he says the concept of a refugee is so foreign we can't even picture it. Most of my friends in the developed world will never experience anything like this. Too often we ignore them or wish we could ignore them. And he just talks about kind of his experiences being as a refugee, just how blessed he is. They're not living in a refugee camp. He didn't have to leave his family's fate in the hands of strangers. So, he doesn't say where he's
I
at,
know.
but
I'm really curious where they're at. It sounds like
yeah.
maybe somewhere in Europe still.
Yeah, exactly. And that, maybe they had some friends or somebody that they can
Mhm.
stay with. But he also talks about how he's gone and tried to help others, and that he and his wife, I really liked this. My wife and I are spending every waking moment late into each night helping our friends who are still in Ukraine and any others we hear about, coordinating escapes, shelters, and sending money. But we still feel so powerless. It seems like we simply take turns crying throughout the day. We are emotionally and mentally exhausted, but then we remember the courage of those who are actually fighting in the streets, and we must muster the energy to keep going. And he talks about family and friends who have sent him money so that he's able to help some of these refugees. He also talks about an ancestor of his that he turns to, which I really liked. He says, my ancestor, Hosea Stout, served as the chief of police in Nauvoo and was the personal bodyguard of Joseph Smith. And he was a refugee almost 200 years ago. And he talks about Hosea Stout and his family having to flee Nauvoo, and that he even before becoming a refugee, he worked with refugees, and he would keep this picture on his wall and explain to them, I have this in my heritage. I don't fully understand now. Of course he does, but that he would have some connection to them. And he says, Ukraine is a very special holy place. I knew it from my first day as a missionary back in 2001. The saints are some of the most sincere, resilient, and incredible people I've ever met. And he concludes it by saying, please pray for us. Ukraine needs and deserves all the help it can get. So I just really liked that because, it's easy in the beginning to, oh, this is so tragic and pray for them every night. As it wears on and it becomes more commonplace, it's easier to forget that we need to have those prayers for the saints.
It's going to be a long-term thing. So,
all right, I will do one last story before we move on.
Okay.
You may recall President Nelson. He is a big fan of the NAACP.
Yes.
And that last year, he and the Reverend Amos Brown got together and they decided they were going to do this partnership that they announced that will provide $6 million in humanitarian aid over 3 years to inner cities, $3 million in scholarships donations over as many years, and a fellowship to send up to 50 students to Ghana to learn about Black, American, and African history. So they have started accepting these applications for these students who want to do this fellowship from Ghana. And they're accepting applications through March 25th. And the fellows will spend 10 days in Ghana from July 31st to August 10th. They will be immersed in Guyanese culture. They will learn about the Atlantic slave trade and receive deep insights into their ancestral lineage. And they are hoping that this experience will help equip students to build bridges between communities, become social justice leaders, and ambassadors for racial justice. But what is really interesting that made this story in the news this week is these individuals who are selected as fellows, they have a reading list before they go. And on their reading list is a talk by President Nelson, his remarks at the NAACP 2019 National Convention. And so they will be required to read his remarks and understand what he has to say. So
I know, I did think that was interesting.
I thought that was pretty cool, to say the least.
I guess that's how it works when you donate money, right?
There you go. Y'all go read my talk. Go read my thoughts. But, it's good because President Nelson wants to build bridges with the NAACP and he wants to have an understanding of them and he wants them to have an understanding of us.
Yeah, it is
so
good.
that we can build those bridges.
And it's fun to see the updates on what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Like the wheels are moving,
Exactly.
So that's cool.
So.
All right.
We
don't have a lot of Mormons behaving badly.
The Mormons
this week.
have not been behaving badly.
They've been very good leading up to conference.
They have been very good. Because I did Mormons behaving badly when I recorded with Jeff 2 weeks ago. But since then, in the last 2 weeks,
all is quiet.
All is quiet on the Western Front.
And you know what that means? That means we're going to get a spurt.
That's exactly how this works.
In about a month.
I'm going to have so many Mormons behaving badly. I'm going to have stories just coming out my ears.
Rolling
nefarious behavior.
Rolling our eyes. We do appreciate it when Mormons behave nicely.
Yes. But I do have just a little bit of a brief update for, we love a good Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow. And the judge ruled just this week that they have to have their trial together. The attorneys were wanting to separate the trial, and the judge said, no. We're not going to separate the trial.
Now, this is very bad for them, right?
Oh, yeah, this is really bad
because their evidence together much worse.
Oh,
alone, not quite as awful, even though still awful.
Yeah, exactly. But the only problem is she's still in the funny farm. And so until they certify her that she is not crazy and can stand trial.
So is he just going to sit in jail?
He's just sitting in jail.
Until she can be on trial.
Until she can be on trial at the same time.
That seems fair.
So, there you go.
All right.
Should we move on to favorite things?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Well, I can hardly wait to hear what you are going to say your favorite thing
This is my favorite thing lately for the month.
Okay.
We watched a documentary a couple weeks ago that was so good. And it's actually one that our younger sister told told me about.
Have I?
I don't think you've heard of it. When I went to California, she was telling me about it.
Oh, so she tells you about it, not in the group text.
But now I'm telling you about it, so you can go watch it too.
Well, I'm this is good because I'm just kind of in between shows right now, and I'm looking for something new.
Okay, this one was so good. It's on Hulu, and it's called The Donut King.
The Donut King.
The Donut King. And
do tell. I might be watching this tonight
is
when I go to sleep.
I never in a million years would have found if she hadn't told me about it.
Okay, so what is the premise of The Donut King?
The Donut King is about this guy named Ted, who was a Cambodian refugee in 1975. Gets sent to America, put in a refugee camp, eventually, integrated into society in Southern California.
Okay.
He decided to get to work. He's like, I'm going to live the American dream. So he tried a donut for the first time.
Oh gosh.
Fell in love and was like,
I wouldn't fall in love with the fried pastry.
I know. He's like, I want to work for the donut people. So he goes to Winchell's, which was the big all over
Winchell's Donuts,
all over the West Coast at the time.
Okay.
And he worked for them for a little while, learned the tricks, learned the secrets, and then he opened his own donut store and more donut stores. And then as these Cambodian refugees came over, at first it was like a few family members. He'd get them involved in the donut business. And then it was, friends of a friend or friend of a family member or so-and-so's great uncle. Yeah. And he would just bring them in and put them to work. And he ended up just dominating. These Cambodian donut shops just ended up dominating in California, like Southern California,
so
all the way up
out
to the
Winchell's?
Yes.
Oh, dang.
They took over being the dominant donut maker. And at that time, Dunkin' Donuts was trying to get in on the West Coast too. And they also, knocked them out of the anyway.
Dang.
So it's kind of the rise and fall of this, refugee, Cambodian refugee.
Does he have a fall in his business too?
Well, you'll have to watch and find out. It's the rise and the fall and the saga,
the redemption,
and the drama of the donuts and the family members. And to this day, there is still just a huge community of these Cambodian donut shops in California.
How fascinating.
And I just had no idea. And
I'm so really have to watch
and
that.
I also learned a lot about what happened in Cambodia in the 70s, which I had no idea. And we have a sister-in-law from Cambodia.
We do have a sister-in-law from Cambodia.
I felt like,
of course, she wasn't born
in the 70s. She wasn't born yet, but I felt like, this is really some good background to have. Anyway, it was one of the best documentaries I've seen in a long time.
Okay. I'm gonna have to go watch. Start watching that.
The Donut King.
The Donut King
on Hulu.
Okay, so my favorite thing is a cleaning product.
Oh, I love a cleaning product.
Well, you use this cleaning product, so I know you love this cleaning product. Everybody I know uses this cleaning product except for me, and I finally bought the cleaning product, and I was like, well, now I know why everybody uses the cleaning product.
What is it?
It is the Dawn Power Spray.
Oh, yes.
I love the Dawn Power Spray. Now, I keep my regular detergent. So I've got my regular dish soap plus the Dawn Power Spray because I use the regular dish soap for different things than I use the Dawn Power Spray for.
Me too. You got to have both.
But one of my favorite things to use the Dawn Power Spray for is I have a gas range, just like you do. And it never fails. Every night when I cook, I get grease and crap and all over the gas range. Mm-hmm. So, I can usually, if I'm cooking every day, usually by about 4 or 5 days, it's pretty disgusting. So I just take my Dawn Power Spray and I spray the whole thing down with my Dawn Power Spray, let it sit there for a minute, and then I wipe it away. It is seriously the easiest way to clean my gas range.
It's really good at grease.
It is so good at grease. And so I do the backsplash behind, I do my vent above. I'm just like, where have you been all my life? Yeah, so I am a big fan of the Dawn Power Spray. I'm a little late to the party, but I did make it to the party.
Here's my only complaint about the Dawn Power Spray: the scents.
Oh, see, I just have the regular. Does it come in other scents?
It comes in all kinds of scents, and I finally found a scent that is acceptable to me.
Okay,
the citrus scent.
So, what don't you like about the regular scent?
I don't know. The regular scent doesn't smell like regular Blue Dawn. I love the smell of regular Blue Dawn, but the Power Spray smells different.
Okay, yeah, you're right about that.
I can't describe it. It's just not as good. And then one time I tried the green apple. Disgusting. Okay. What other scent? There was like a fresh scent.
Okay.
Something fresh. Didn't like it. But I do like the citrus.
Okay. Well, and you and I have similar scent issues, so I probably would like the citrus. The other thing that I did with the Dawn Power Spray is I had some sort of a grease stain or something. It was a grease stain on my office carpet because my chair had rolled off of the chair mat that I have and it left this black grease stain. So I just took the Dawn Power Spray and I hit that black chair grease
I
stain with the
wonder if
Dawn
it would
Power
work
Spray.
on clothing.
Oh, I bet it probably would.
We're gonna have to
Because
experiment.
regular Dawn is my favorite thing for getting grease out of
Yes,
clothing.
me
That is
too.
I keep a little mini bottle of Dawn
Me
in
too.
in my closet so that if I ever have anything that has grease on it, I just put a little dab of Dawn, put it in the laundry basket,
Yes.
and then by the time I wash it, voila, the grease is gone.
Yes.
Dawn, it's an amazing product.
All right. Well, I think that does it for the week. Happy conference, everyone.
Yes, enjoy this weekend, and get your cinnamon rolls out. If
That's
a
right.
lot of people do cinnamon rolls for conferences.
That's
It's a big
right.
tradition,
LDS Living had, leave it to LDS Living.
of course.
They had a post for 4 fantastic breakfast recipes for conference.
Okay, so there you go. If you're looking for breakfast recipes for conference, hit up the LDS Living. So
Yeah. And Jeff will be on Sunday night.
yes, Sunday night they're going to do a conference
Jeff
recap.
and friends.
Jeff and friends.
Probably not us.
Yeah,
this time, but he'll have a variety.
Yeah, we think we have some other conflicts this time that are not gonna allow us to participate, but we will certainly listen.
Mm-hmm.
So
for sure.
Anyway, thank you, Twim Nation, for joining us today. And we appreciate your support. As always, if you have any questions or comments, you can write a little email at contact@thisweekinmormons.com. Go straight to Jeff's inbox. So send all your complaints to him, not us.
That's how we like it.
That's how we like it. Facebook, Twitter. I'm sure Jeff will have his tide tracker going. He always does.
Oh, yeah. I just put up temple predictions this week, so.
And if you really want to be a super fan, join Patreon, be a subscriber supporter, $3 a month, keep our lights on. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for listening.